Hello and welcome to Uncovering Our Hidden History. My name is Anna. I'm a genealogist as well as a historical researcher, and I created this channel in order to be able to have a place to show everything that I've been finding in my research the past 5 years. And so if you have made your way here, welcome. We're very glad to have you. And for those that you have been with me for a while, thanks for taking time to come back and check out these videos. And as always, I appreciate your comments. You guys bring a lot of really good stuff to the table. So today, let's see, this is World War III, Part 3B. And for those of you that are new to us, this video is not going to make a lot of sense. You won't have context for it. So I suggest you click on the channel icon and go down to the playlist and start with the first video. This series is called 3 World Wars, and it's talking about Albert Pike's letter to Giuseppe Mazzini outlining 3 world wars, and this was in 1871. So just to give you some context, so start with the very first video and then work your way through, and then this video will make a lot more sense. So glad to have you with us, and let's get started. All right, let me pull up my PowerPoint presentation. Again, the Third World War Agenda, and this is Part 3B. So far we have covered World War I, and then World War II ended up being 4 parts, 2A, 2B, 2C, and 2D. And I have no idea how many parts this is going to end up being. As a matter of fact, let me come back here. So just as a reminder, because World War I and World War II have already happened, it was easier to kind of go, okay, well, this happened, and then this, and then this, and then this. And I was able to lay things out in a pretty linear fashion. But because we are already in World War III, it's really hard to define what the very beginning is, because there's so many facets to World War III, and we know from Albert Pike's letter that World War III is primarily supposed to be to destroy all the religions, okay? And the only reason that they would want to destroy all the religions is because they're working towards their one world religion. This is why they had to destroy all the monarchies of the world, is because they didn't want independent countries or independent city-states. So they had to destroy all of the individual monarchies and then put their puppet leaders in place in order to gather everybody together and bring everybody into a one world government. So they've had the one world government thing going for a while, and they are well on their way to pushing us towards a one world religion. And those that have been paying attention to this, you'll understand that. And so since I can't really do this in a linear fashion, think of this more like I have brought a puzzle box to the table, and I've dumped it upside down. I don't know if any of you and your families like to do jigsaw puzzles, but when we get together with the extended family for vacations here and there, there's usually somebody in the family will dump out a puzzle, all the puzzle pieces, and there's one table that's reserved, and people will just come in and out and look through the pieces and put, puzzle pieces together. So you'll have groupings that are showing little pictures, but it's not until we get all of those put together that we're able to get the full picture. So it's like that. I have no kind of method for doing this. I'm just kind of pulling pieces together that seem to fit together. And so our puzzle is on our table, on our pretend imaginary table, is going to have different groupings as I'm putting things together. And so that's kind of the method that I'm working with right now. Okay, so so I just wanted to explain that. Now, okay, so again here, this is our fair use warning. It allows us to be able to use other people's material for teaching purposes or criticism or whatever without infringing on copyright laws. So I'm making sure I put that up. Okay, so just a quick summary of our last video. This slide kind of, wraps up, I think, part 3A. And I said what we are actually seeing happen with the state of Israel and the surrounding Muslim countries is depopulation and ethnic cleansing. We are witnessing innocent civilians being murdered, not opposing military groups killing each other. And so, again, what we covered last week is there's kind of two parts to World War III. It's having the Muslims and the state of Israel in constant battle, right? Having the Middle East in constant turmoil and battle with the end goal of them mutually destroying each other. I can't prove this, but I find it interesting that more and more people are waking up to the fact that the Jewish people are not the Hebrew people of the Bible. And I'm seeing more and more, especially young Jewish people taking their DNA tests, and then they're doing their DNA reveals on YouTube. And they're like, oh, look, our DNA we've never even been in the Middle East. Like, it's almost becoming too easy at this point. It's almost like the controllers are allowing that information to get out there because I think they want people's disgust and frustration against the state of Israel to help move that plan along. And so, so that's part of it. And then the other part, as I said, was about destroying all of the religions and bringing everybody to the universal religion and their universal God. So, but as we talked about in the last video, like for example, in the state of Israel, the Grand Priory or the Jesuits or the papal bloodlines. I'm not exactly sure who, human-wise is at the tippy top of the food chain there, but they control. I don't know if you guys remember last week I put up the puppet master, and he's got two puppets, right? So the puppet master controls both the state of Israel and the Hamas and Taliban. So whenever the Mockingbird media is putting information out there saying, oh, this fill in the blank Islamic country, right, did a strike, or Hamas did a strike, or the Taliban did this, now Israel's going to counter and they're going to do this. And well, it's all for show because Hamas and the Taliban work for whoever's running, the state of Israel, and then Chabad and their intelligence agency Mossad, they all work for the same thing. So almost picture it like, when it's time to put on the show, everybody goes in from both sides, clocks in, shakes hands, pats each other on the back, catches up, and they're like, okay, showtime. Now we have to pretend to be fighting each other. And what they're really doing, though, they're causing explosions. They're causing false flag events. Real people are dying, but it's innocent civilians. And right now, the state of Israel seems intent on completely wiping out all of the Palestinians that are in Gaza. And so I would just ask that you pray however the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, leads you to pray about that situation, because innocent people who don't have any way of defending themselves are actually dying, not the military people. Okay, so that's pretty much what I explained. They are creating these false flag events, and they're genociding the Palestinians. The Jesuits and their Israeli puppets will wipe out millions of innocent civilians who did absolutely nothing but exist on the land that the Zionists want. The Rothschilds, the Rotten Children, on orders from their Jesuit papal masters above them, or the Grand Sanhedrin, or the Priory, I'm not sure who it is, are killing off the Palestinians, and again, fill in the blank with whatever Middle Eastern country you want to, but their Mockingbird media will be sure to make it look otherwise. And so how are they able to do that? How are they able to control what comes out in the news? Well, I am so glad you asked. It's because dun, 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 they own all of the media. This has been a slow and gradual process since the early 1800s of the Rotten Children using their wealth to slowly buy up all the newspapers and all those publications, because so many people were crying out and blasting the Rotten Children and the Zionists in general about what they were doing. And so that doesn't look good for their image, does it? So what do you do to silence people besides deny, blame, and then reassess? What do you do? Like, they couldn't blame it on the Soviets at that point, or the Bolsheviks, or the propagandist Germans, because, they were still on good terms with the Germans. So what do? You buy up all the newspapers. And so all of the media, the newspapers, the TV stations, the news stations, they own all of it. And so this quote, or this slide, is from Benjamin Friedman's The Hidden Tyranny. And he says, most Jews do not like to admit it, but our God is Lucifer. That is a quote from this interview he's posting. He says, this booklet contains the text of a most revealing and shocking interview of a Jew by the name of Harold Rosenthal, which was conducted in 1976 by a concerned patriot, a gentleman named Walter White Jr. Mr. Rosenthal, an influential Jew, learned in the Jewish ways and involved in the workings of government in Washington, D.C., explained the Jewish involvement and cause of the major problems that we face today. Again, this is in 1967. I mean, Mr. Friedman, who was a really good guy and did everything he could and used all of his inheritance, he was born into a high Jewish family, for those who don't remember. And once he found out what the Zionists were up to, he spent the rest of his life trying to warn the churches and warn everybody. He wrote 2 books, Facts Are Facts and The Hidden Tyranny, trying to expose this. And so I think if he were alive, he'd be quite shocked at how far that they've gotten today. Anyway, he says, Rosenthal, in exposing certain aspects of the inner invisible world of Jewry, revealed the modes and tactics that Jews have used in destroying Christian civilization and covertly attaining control over our lives and our governments. The result has been a hidden tyranny, hence the title of the book, upon us, like the tyranny waged against the saints by the red beast system of revelation referred to as Mystery Babylon. This Jew, Mr. Harold Wallace Rosenthal, made this statement after admitting Jewish dominance in all significant national programs. Okay, not just Mockingbird Media. He quotes Mr. Rosenthal. We Jews continue to be amazed with the ease by which Christian Americans have fallen into our hands. While the naive Americans wait for Khrushchev to bury them, we have taught them to submit to our every command. Remember the protocols we read last week? And then parentheses, it says, this submission has been made possible by the gradual adoption of Talmudic concepts as being Christian, thus producing a Jewish society. It is what Rabbi Martin Siegel calls the Judaization of Christianity. And we talked about that last week. So Mr. Friedman continues, when asked how a nation could be captured without their knowing it, Mr. Rosenthal attributed this victory to absolute control of the media. He boasted of Jewish control of all the media. Any newspaper which refused to absolute control of, any newspaper which refused the absolute control of the media. He boasted of Jewish, okay, I don't know if this ended up in here twice. He boasted of Jewish control of all media. Any newspaper which refused to acquiesce to the controlled news was brought to its knees by withdrawing advertising. Failing in this, the Jews will stop the supply of the newsprint and ink. It's a very simple matter, he stated. Sounds like a great guy, huh? So here's just an example of Jewish Mockingbird media groups. You can see that CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Huffington Post, the Guardian. What else is that? I can't read the little red one at the bottom. The BBC. Wow. Vox and BuzzFeed. So NBC and then MSNBC would be included in that. They're all Jewish owned. So it doesn't matter what channel you go to for your programming, right? Pun intended. You're going to hear the same spiel, the same programming message. Now, here is a picture of the CFR, which is the Council for Foreign Relations, which is over all the media. Okay, and so you've got the Bilderberg meetings, the Council for Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral Commission. Okay, and then you can see underneath that all of the lines going to all of the various networks and stations and groups. And you can see what they've done is create a complete web from the top down. Okay, not from the bottom up. They were very ingenious in this and went from the top down to create a web over, so there was no escaping. Okay, so I'm not going to read these names, but again, as always, you are more than welcome to take screenshots of any of these slides so that you can use them for further study yourself or to pass them on to other people. And please feel free to like and share these videos with other people that you think would benefit from them. Okay, but the following slides are a list of Jewish-owned newspapers and publishers, and so you would pretty much have to screenshot that to read all of that. Okay, this is a list of Jewish-owned television stations, film, and radio. All of these people. Quite a long list. And then the pictures are, I guess, the more well-known people. Oh, very long list. Look at all those. Still going. So that's television, film, news, all of those people. Okay. And here on this slide, we see a list of the Jewish-owned music companies. So you've got Capitol Records, Virgin Records, EMI, RCA, Jive, Motown, Geffen, Warner Brothers, Atlantic, Universal, Sony, BMG, Columbia, and Def Jam. On we go. So they pretty much all of the music companies and labels are owned by the Jews. Okay, so Capitol Music Group and Capitol Christian Music Group, parent company was EMI from 1992 to 2013. And then at present, from 2013 to now, you've got Universal Music Group. I find that interesting because there seems to be a theme happening with everything being universal. Universal healthcare, universal religion, the universal God, right? Universal. And then under Capitol, you've got Capitol Christian Distribution, Gaither Music Group. You've got Capitol CMG Group, which is formerly EMI CMG. And under this is Bethel Music, Credential Recordings, Forefront Recordings, Sparrow Records, Worship Together, Bethel Music, and then you've got Hillsong Music, Six Step Records, and on down it goes. So that's secular and Christian music are all Jewish owned. Okay, and here are some of the people who own all of those music companies and labels. Now, I'd like to introduce you to a gentleman by the name of, well, he went by John Todd, but his birth name, his real name was Lance Collins of the Druidic Collins bloodline family. John was born into this Collins family bloodline, was part of the system his entire life, didn't know anything else, was, doing all the evil deeds. He reported directly to the Rotten Children, and his testimony is quite amazing. Well, if I'm remembering correctly, and I will leave links in the video description so you can hear his testimony. But if I remember correctly, I think he was in San Antonio, and he was in charge, high level, he was in charge of all of the drugs going in and out, all of the witchcraft. He was a witch. He said they're all witches. And surprisingly enough, in some of his interviews, they said that they didn't worship Satan, but they worshiped Lucifer. So, I don't know, kind of very interesting. But anyway, there was a local Baptist pastor, and I think this was before all the Baptist churches got taken over by the Freemasons. And they probably got taken over by the Freemasons because they were actually preaching truth and they were a threat. But there was, in John's town, there was a particular Baptist church and pastor, and the pastor found out that his daughter had become addicted to drugs, and like her whole life was just going downhill. And so they were able to find out somehow, I don't know if it was through her or doing some digging, that John kind of was the head of this organization. So this pastor and the entire church took to doing intercessory prayer and crying out to the Most High to save John, to get a hold of his life and to stop the drugs and to stop everything. And so they had been praying for many, many months, maybe even a year. And kind of the spoiler, John had a very intense encounter and did end up giving the Most High moved in such a powerful way that he saw that the Most High was more powerful than all of the witchcraft stuff that he and the Illuminati were into. But he talks about that the one thing that pulled him the most was the love of this pastor and these people, because he talks about all the fear. Like, you're always in fear, and that's how the system keeps you in line, is in fear. You're always, in fear. And so I believe he had a real born-again experience and accepted Messiah, and I think it was like 1972. And then he spent a couple years with, I don't know if it was the same pastor or kind of being sheltered by some people in this church, and then he was discipled, and first thing he had to go through was deliverance. And so he does talk about that as soon as those, that he repented. And you cannot be delivered from demonic indwelling and these kind of things without true repentance. You can't just cast something out of somebody. They have to repent of opening those doors and taking those things on to begin with. And so he did that, and it was a process of a 2-year discipleship program where he was reading the word and going through healing. So starting about, I think, 1974-ish is when certain Baptist churches would invite him to come and speak to their congregations, because not a lot of people in the early 1970s understood the Illuminati. It's not like today where all this information is out and we've heard these terms. It was all still very hush hush and hidden. And so he spent probably from the 1974 up to, I don't know, maybe 1980 or so, just telling everything about this whole organization, and his own family as well as others in the system had put hits out on him to take him out. And so let me move to the next slide. And so it says John Todd made several appearances and audio tapes within the Christian community warning of the plans of the Illuminati before he was framed. So later in the late 70s, I think early 1980s, he was framed. He was imprisoned, and then once they got him in jail, he was drugged, and then they sent him to a mental institution all of this in order to discredit him and his testimony. And then he just kind of disappeared. No one's heard from him since. So several attempts were made on his life, and today no one knows for sure what became of John Todd. But the following audio by John Todd speaks about the dangers of rock and roll music. And so I'm going to be using different clips from his testimony. And today, because we're talking about, the Jewish owned and Jewish controlled music groups and things, I would like you guys to hear what John had to say about that. And so I'm going to go ahead and play that for you now.
What's a charismatic? Okay. A charismatic, let's put it this way, the charismatic movement to the outside people is the movement that declares the speaking of tongues. Okay? That is separate from the Pentecostal denominations and churches. Most people do not realize that the Pentecostal churches are not part of the charismatic movement. In fact, many of them oppose it. All right? The charismatic movement in reality was one of 3 steps declared back in 1964 to do 2 things, while the main function was to destroy the fundamental church of any type. All right? The Masons was one, and the charismatic church was another. Okay? And then the political maneuvers was the third. Now, most people, they get caught up in the charismatic movement. They don't stand back and watch it. It has 2 distinct signs wherever it goes. If it isn't a fundamental church, it splits it every time. I've never seen any fundamental evangelical church stay the same after it came there. And the other thing it does is it unites all the liberal churches. It has brought the Catholics, the Lutherans, and the Mormons, even the Mormons, the Methodists, the Episcopalians, Presbyterians, everybody together. Now, I'm going to make some quotations. See, I'm not a charismatic, I admit it, but I'm not a Baptist either, so don't say I'm saying it because I'm a Baptist. I'm against it. I'm against it for one reason. I was on the Council of 13 and had to pay too many millions of dollars out to that organization to accept that it be of God and its leaders, since I know most of its leaders by first name basis. They used the charismatic movement to establish Jesus Rock. I had to deliver a $4 million check that was the second $4 million check that Chuck Smith, that created Calvary Chapel and Maranatha Productions, received from the Illuminati. And he knew it was Illuminati money before you go out of here and say that he didn't. The purpose of it was to build Maranatha Industries and Productions, which started Jesus Rock. Back when the Christian church was preaching against rock music, not knowing why, but preaching against it just the same, and throwing it out the churches, that scared the Illuminati and the occult world to death. At that time, they almost thought their end had come. Because if that really happened within the Christian church would have the biggest mass revival of souls in the United States that this world has ever seen. That's the purpose for rock music, to make sure that that never takes place. Now, okay, let me finish all this, because it's long, before any hands come rushing up. When that took place, they got scared. So they got smart, they thought, and they built Jesus Rock. And you can take some of the top Jesus Rock songs, and you can play the same rock songs over here, and it's the very same tune with new words stuck in. Now, I want to give you a key that witches know about. Okay? The sign of the devil's music, as they say of Lucifer's music, is not the words. It's the music. The power is in the music. The sign of Christian music is not the music. It's the words. That's why one song written by a group will catch on and will bless Christians' hearts, and others won't. Have you ever wondered why the Gaithers are the #1 group in the United States? It's not because they sing great. It's because of the songs they write and the power in those songs. Now, I know from being in the occult world the power in music. And I'm saying all this because I was the leader of Zodiac. I was going to get on this, and I'm still taking care of yours at the same time. By somebody asked me about rock music, but I'll do it this way. The thing about rock music was I was the leader of Zodiac Productions, which is the conglomerate that owns almost all of the rock booking agencies and production of concerts in the United States. Almost 95% of the groups that you hear in concert belong to contract to Zodiac Productions. Most of the friends that I have that are still in the world are friends that I met in the rock industry, of people whose albums you buy today. Okay? The Illuminati doesn't produce rock music to entertain you. They don't produce rock music to make money. They don't need that money. They own everything anyway. They do it to put demonic influence in your life. The music is a spell, and every witch knows it. That's why when somebody's saved out of the occult, and they say, to say, Pastor, what do I do? The pastor will go, well, burn everything that has to do with the occult. That's all the pastor says. And they'll bring in their rock records. Nobody has to tell them to do it. They were in witchcraft. They know what rock music is. Now, kids, I'm going to get you with this. Parents, don't pray that your kids throw out the rock music. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to you. You are the head of the house, and although you think it belongs to them, according to God's word, everything in that house is yours. And you are the one that will face Jesus and say why you had it. The problem with Christians, particularly in a Baptist church, is that they don't realize that there's two judgments coming. One for the lost and one for the saved.
witchcraft. You may not think that this message has anything to do with you, but you're missing the whole point. I was in a world where it was impossible to become a Christian, and Jesus made me one. I was by one of the girls that I used to live with when I was in the occult world. Recently, she was at a very important witchcraft meeting that we happened to find out about, and I pulled into the parking lot for a few minutes to see who was there. And she walked by the car and had a couple of Christian brothers with me. She looked in the car and just smiled and kept on walking, never recognized me. That's the difference between the way I am now and the way I was then. When the Lord changes you, He totally changes you. Now, we give our testimony for several reasons, to show that no matter what, whether you were raised a Christian and you know all your life, or you were raised in a worse frame of life, it's still the same miracle. God still saves you just the same. Sometimes I think it's harder to get the PKs and the Christian kids saved than it is the witches. But at the same time, we try to flag you down from going the same direction we went, with drugs. You'll never know the feeling to lose so many friends that should be with you today and so many loved ones because of drugs that we kept convincing ourselves was all right. This isn't some preacher getting up here and telling you that's never been in it. I wished I had a half hour to talk about the worst thing that the occult world ever planned out and carried out. That's called rock music. But I'm going to say two quick things. Parents, the rock music does not belong to you, your kids. If your kids are in your home, it belongs to you and you're answerable for it. And if you want to believe they're garbage, that it's all right, and you want to forget things like Kiss saying that their real name is Kings in Satanic Service, and that rock music is actually satanic spells being cast and being planned by the Satanist church, and that's a direct quote, then you go right on ahead. Right now, one of the Manson family girls is in trial, and she said the number one thing that the occult world used to brainwash them was Beatle music and rock music. If you want to leave it in your home, I won't go into details why you can't, but if you want to leave it in your home and all the demons that it attracts, fine. If you want your kids to buffalo you, that it's all right. But I recommend you go home today, get a cardboard box, and break the records, and burn those covers, and get it out of your home. And you'd be surprised at how fast your kids come around after they finish throwing their 2-year-old tantrum. But I wish that I had the time more on rock music, but believe me, it is the work carefully planned out in the occult world. We spent $8 million to produce Jesus rock music and pay the man who started it, named Chuck Smith, just because Christians were destroying rock music and we were afraid that it would be banned from the Christian church. So we carefully put it in the form of Christian rock music. So if they would spend $8 million to keep rock music in your hands, then the hardcore rock must be even worse. And it is. I'm going to... Okay, Pastor. I don't mind. I drove all day so I could say these things. I was the manager of Zodiac Productions, which Zodiac Productions' name's been changed since then. I'm not even sure what they call it now, but it's the largest music conglomerate in the world. It owns RCA Records, Columbia Records, Motown Records, owns almost all the concert booking agencies in the United States. And that's not even the name of the company that owns it. The name of the company that owns it is Brenner Enterprises, and Brenner Enterprises is owned by Chase Manhattan. Chase Manhattan's owned by Standard Oil, and Standard Oil is owned by the Lords of London. You can track it on back. You kind of get the idea after a while. But I was the managing president of Zodiac Productions. It's one of my jobs as being one of these 13 people. Thus, I got to know many of the people who produce music and sing the music and play the music that you play. Recently, one of the top people in rock music from the group, can't think of the name of the group now, it's one of the top rock groups still in existence that's been around a long time, was just saved. And he told how when they'd play in their concerts, they would control, through witchcraft spells in their mind, the people to do different things in the audience. And that they'd work the audience up not with the music, but with their mind and their music combination. Now, one of the closest friends that I got during that time that I obtained was a man named David Crosby. Crosby, Still Nash and Young. And I saw David the day before Christmas last year, talked with him. I got him away from this witch that he had with him. He told her to go shopping. We were in West Hollywood, and I was witnessing around to people I knew. We went off in this store, and we started talking. I said, David, I'd like to ask you a couple questions. I said, I already know the answers, but I've been gone for 5 years. I'd like to know if certain things are still the way they were when I left. I said, now I'll have to explain some of this when I'm done, because you're not going to understand it all unless you know something about music. I said, do they still take the master to the temple room? Dave said, yeah. I said, do they still have the coven conjure demons into the master? He said, of course. I said, now, I got to know something. What's the main reason for rock music? He said, come on, Lance, you know what the reason is. I said, please, David, I don't want to guess. Tell me what the main reason is. He says, the same as when you were in, so that we can play spells on people that we couldn't cast spells upon. I'll explain what that means in a minute. I said, okay, one last thing. I've been hearing that you must be an initiated witch now to get a record contract. He said, that's right. He says, many of us that weren't total witches have to be witches now in order to produce music. I said, thank you. The master is a tape about as big as the top of this podium that looks like an overgrown 8-track that the album is cut on and is placed in a machine that produces and presses the records and the 8-tracks and cassettes that you buy. After it's been recorded, it's taken in. This is why a master's cut months in advance before it's released. On the full moon, it's taken in to a temple room about the size of this auditorium that is in every one of the major music companies, behind locked doors up in the executive offices. And it's placed on an altar sitting in the north of the room and a pentagram engraved in the floor. And 13 hand-chosen witches and wizards and a coven come in and conjure a principality or a power up, usually Regia or something like that, and order him to tell the demons under him to follow every record and every tape coming off of that master. As I tell many Christian parents, you can go home and count your kids' records, probably yours too, and count how many demons at least are there. If that's too hard for you to believe, I'm sorry. That's why they do it. Now listen to me. This is why rock music's addicting. Have you ever seen kids that got rid of their music? They go around like this. They can't wait to find a rock station somewhere and they sneak off just like getting a cigarette or a fix because it's addicting. That's why they can't give it up. The rest of the conversation was this. You can't cast a spell on a Christian, but you can get a Christian to cast a spell on themselves. If you give the permission for the spell to work, being a Christian won't block it. And rock music is not just a song. It is supernatural music that which is carefully designed by their spirit guides or familiar spirits in the form of spells. Now, although the devil's music's power is the music and God's music is the words, much of the songs are written in what we call witch language. To give you kind of an idea, many of you talk on a CB, unless you know what a smoky is, and a 10-4, and a front door and back door and rocking chair and these type of things, you don't know what you're talking about. Same with witches. When you're in the first and second level, you have to learn over 2,000 words that said by anybody else means something totally different than when you say them. Elton John has said he's never written a song or sung a song that wasn't in witch language. Now I want to show you something. See how many kids in here will be honest and adults. How many remember and have heard at least several times a song called Hotel California? Somebody tell me what it meant. Quickly, somebody tell me what it meant. Huh? That's pretty close. But from the words, what did it mean? Well, that's more of a guess. See, most people can't tell you. That's why when people do drugs and they listen to songs in which language, they get some of the meaning. But most of the time, they can't tell you. Stop and think how many songs are out there that you really like, and you don't have any idea what the person was talking about. Beyond the Yellow Brick Road? How about The Destroyer by Kiss? Can anybody tell me what it's about? Kiss said in it, kids, kill your parents. They're talking about Helter Skelter. Beatles sung Helter Skelter in which language? Nobody knew what it meant. Manson did because he belonged to the process. Helter Skelter is a several thousand-year-old word.
Well, I hope you found that very eye-opening, and I don't know. There's just no words to describe how evil these people are. Okay, so let's go back over here to the slideshow. Okay, so this is a quote from A.E. Waite, and he says, "Out of evil comes good, however, and the confusion of out of evil comes good, however, and the confusion of tongues." He's talking about at the Tower of Babel. And by the way, this guy is not a good guy. If you've done any research into the New Age, Theosophy, all of that, he was definitely down that road. And so this is what they believe, okay? That good comes out of evil, right? Out of the evil impulse. That the more evil you do, then it good comes from it. So he says, and he's talking about the confusion of tongues being at the Tower of Babel when the Most High confused all the languages because of what Nimrod was doing. So he says, out of evil comes good. However, and the confusion of tongues gave rise to the ancient practice of Masons conversing without the use of speech. So what he is talking about are the signs and the symbols. And you guys, let me just say, once you begin to learn and understand their signs and symbols, you will see them everywhere. And you will begin to understand what they mean. Okay? And so this is part of what I've been doing the last 4+ years, is trying to understand what these signs and symbols mean to them. So that way, so for example, if you're a Freemason, right, or if you're part of the Brotherhood, and you're traveling to any city or state, you will look for places, if you need lodging, for example, or you need, to find other members of the Brotherhood and you're trying to be discreet, you're going to look for their signs and symbols, which will be posted somewhere on their buildings or their websites and things. And so then you'll know, where to go. So I want to show you, since again, we're still talking about the music industry right now, and then based upon what you just heard John talk about, okay, I want you to see within the pictures of the music artists themselves. And I'm not even getting into Hollywood right now, or any of the other areas. Right now I'm just focusing on music, because music is huge. It's, it is such a powerful medium that touches our emotions, good or bad, right? And so just so you can see what John was talking about, that you don't get to be a music artist. You don't get to be a music star unless you have gone through these rituals, and these people are witches, male and female. And so, like the first one here, this is Kiss, and John talks about in some of the videos that KISS stands for Knights in Satan's Service. Okay? But I want you to particularly pay attention to the signs and symbols that they use as we go through these videos. And there's Madonna on the right. Okay? Then here you've got the Beatles. In the top left, they're holding up their yellow submarine, and their Paul McCartney is holding up the symbol for 666, and John Lennon is holding up the devil horns. Okay, and then in the video right next to, or the picture right next to them, it's one of their older videos from the 1960s, and they're holding down upside down crosses. Okay, and then on the bottom row left, you've got Lady Gaga, and I had to put a little thing across the front of her because it's it's not appropriate in general, let alone on the cover of her album. And she's doing two of the signs. She's doing the 666 around the eye, and then she's doing the one for this which we'll talk about later, but that is a Masonic symbol as well. And then the middle picture, I'm not sure who that recording artist is, but he's doing the 666 eye thing. And then to the right is Celine Dion, and you can see she's doing the one eye. The one eye thing. Okay, and then we've got Bono in the top and David Bowie below. So this is their signaling. Now, to the normal fans who don't understand these signs and symbols, they just, think they're doing I don't even know what they think they're doing. Weird gestures at best. But these signs and symbols have meanings. They're signaling who they belong to. Okay, now here in the middle, we've got Kanye West. And he's got something called Jesus with an upside down cross. And then the lady sitting to the right looks like she's got some kind of snake or reptilian tongue coming out of her mouth. And then also in the bottom left corner, that's also a picture of Kanye doing on the cross, a broken cross. Okay, so this nonsense, I had already seen this stuff when, they were trying to, oh, Kanye's a Christian. Kanye became a Christian. Kanye gave his life to Jesus, on and on. Kanye, like all of the rest, are programmed. Okay, so maybe one of his parts, had a Christian, one of his alters, personalities had a Christian part, but as a whole, no. They use these poor people. And then you've got the Rolling Stones to the right of that with the Masonic hand inside the shirt. Okay. And then here you've got at top, you've got Miley Cyrus doing the tongue thing, and then the one eye, the wink, right? And then Rihanna. And then Alicia Keys throwing up some devil horn signs. Same with Pink on the bottom, the little devil horns and the tongue. What is her name? Newton-John. She's doing the wink. And then you've got Gwen Stefani as well. Olivia Newton-John, sorry. And then Gwen Stefani. Okay, so what I'm showing here at the top, this is another Freemason symbol. It's the handshake. It's called the pass grip of the fellow craft, okay? And you'll notice it's like a handshake, but the thumb will go on top. And so we've got in the bottom, you've got Jay-Z and Kanye doing that, which is what I've circled. And then here's a picture someone took, and Jay-Z does not look very happy, but someone took a picture of Jay-Z in his Brotherhood meeting. Okay, so he full on is part of the Brotherhood. And that's what all of these signs and symbols mean. It's their way of signaling that they are part of the Brotherhood. Okay. Here is a guy that I like to follow. He puts out some good stuff. He's on YouTube. And his YouTube channel is called Service Christi. And I really like when he does his apostasy reports. And so he did a big one on the corrupt Christian music industry, and I will make sure that I link his this video in my video's description if you want to go and watch the whole thing. It's long, but it's really good, and he gets into all of the ins and outs of the Christian music industry. Okay, so a lot of us would expect what we just saw with the secular music industry, but for believers, we just are too, what's the word? Guileless, right? We're just too trusting and too believing. And so, oh, well, we don't listen to that secular music stuff. We don't listen to all of those. But the Service Christi guy is going to show you that all of the stuff that we talked about with the secular music industry applies to the Christian music industry as well. As a matter of fact, I've put up I pulled up the transcript and took screenshots of his transcript, and I'm just going to focus on what I have in the red square. It says, he says the entire meaning, all of the Christian music industry as you know it is corrupt from the top to the bottom. That is anybody who is officially involved or who has signed to a mainstream label and regarded as notable within the so-called Christian music industry is absolutely compromised to some degree. He says, understand that behind every musician, behind every so-called worship artist, there is a theology, and there's usually a specific teacher or teaching that you cannot divorce the theology from the doxology. And then he says, but even for those things that appear to be good, perhaps a song or two here or there, are theologically sound on the whole, but again, there is a specific theology being championed behind every singer, every band, and every artist. Today, he says, we're going to focus on the musical aspect, and there is a question as to whether or not the whole notion of a worship leader is even biblical whatsoever. And there really isn't. We don't have that even in Scripture, right? King David ministering to Saul on the harp, just so that Saul could have some peace and not be tormented by the demon. That's not that's not a good evidence for worship leaders, okay, in the church. So he says, well, then where do we start? Universal Music Group, one of the big three. You've got Universal, you've got Warner Music Group, and you've got Sony Records. And he says Sony Music Group, he said these are the big three, and Universal is the biggest of the three. Universal Music Group is, for example, he says here are just some of the artists that the Universal Music Group represents. And then he goes about how just the Universal Music Group in general represents like Lady Gaga, Gwen Stefani, Nicki Minaj, on and on, okay? And so you can see with the picture that I put to the right, down below, there's just some of the artists that come up when you click on the browse artists. You've got Lorde, you've got Jessie J, George Michael, Ben Howard, Ariana Grande, all of them, okay? This is just a sampling. But he says, in the Christian music industry today, they are effectively owned by Universal Music Group. This is a worldly conglomerate that is guided by the principles and the dictates of this world. It is not biblical, not even kind of. However, they, like any savvy business person, realize that there is a massive market within Christendom, and in the general sense, in other words, they know that they can make money by marketing these artists. So he's now talking about, let me move it to the side. He's now talking about Capital Christian Music Group, right? Which falls under those main headings of Universal, Sony, or Warner Brothers. Okay, so there you've got Jesus Culture. You've got, I'm not sure what the band at the bottom is, but then you've got Danny Goki. You've got Carrie Job, and then her now husband, cannot remember his name, Cody something. And then you've got Amy Grant. You've got Casting Crowns. You've got Hillsong Worship. All of those people, even though they may be under the Capital Music Group, they're still under the larger umbrellas of those secular ones. Okay, so here's my question for you. If the Jewish-owned record companies in the 1970s were making, because this is what John Todd told us, right? That he had talked to his friend from, I think it was David Crosby from Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And this is after, he was out of the system. But he had a chance encounter with him. And he asked him, he said, are they still making them become witches? And David Crosby said yes. So here's my question. if the Jewish-owned record companies in the 1970s were making musicians go through rituals to become witches in order to be music stars, recording artists, and if the secular record companies also own the Christian record labels, do you really believe that those Christian music artists are going to escape having to do those same rituals of becoming witches? And if the Jewish-owned record companies in the 1970s took the master recording to the temple room, where a coven of 13 witches conjured a high-level demon to enter that master recording, do you really believe that those Christian music master recordings are going to not have something also done to them? Okay, that's my question. I want you to think about that. Take that to prayer. Do some more investigating. Now, here is a screenshot that I actually took. So I'm on Facebook only for the fact that I have a small private. My Facebook is private, and it's got only just a small group of people that I've known from like elementary school, junior high, high school, college, or that I knew, was close to professionally. Now, probably about 3 years ago, maybe even 4 years ago, I stopped posting on there when I realized that it's a spying tool that's used, okay? It's a spying tool. And if you don't know by now, especially you young people, if you're looking to get hired for a job, your prospective employer will go looking for you on Facebook. They're going to look for you on Instagram. They're going to look for you on TikTok. And they're going to see what kind of posts you make, because they want to find out about your true character, right? And so you can go, well, hey, that's not fair. That's infringing upon my rights. Well, guess what? It's social media. You sign away your rights if you have a public TikTok account or a public Instagram or a public Facebook, okay? By making those public, whatever you post can go to anybody. So they're not doing anything illegal, but they are going to hire you or not hire you based upon your social media is the thing. So anyway, as I said, I have just a small, I have a private Facebook group of just the people I mentioned, and I stopped posting anything about my family or my doings when I realized this. I mainly go on just to, see what my longtime friends or family members are posting and kind of seeing what they're doing. Well, I had an acquaintance friend. I wouldn't say she's a close friend, but I have an acquaintance friend on there. And she had posted that she was at a Phil Wickham Brandon Lake concert. And so she posted some screenshots. And I was looking at her screenshots and I was like, and I messaged her, I'm not going to mention her name, and I was like, what's up with the upside down cross? Okay, and this is how blind, this is how absolutely spiritually blind we Christians are. She goes, oh, well, no, I'm sure that that's not an upside down cross. I think that, the singers standing to the back, just, for them it's just a cross. And I said to her, if you know anything about stage performance or theater, anything like that, everything is designed for the audience. It's geared to the audience. So I said, no, that's not a cross for them. I said that is intentionally an upside down cross. And then we're not even going to get into the significance of all the blue the blue hazy stuff. It's all part of programming. And so she just didn't want to hear it, and so I let it go. But I'm taking a picture here for you guys to be able to see. This was from an actual concert about a year ago. Phil Wickham and Brandon Lake. Absolutely 100% is an upside down cross. And they are Christian, in case you don't know about them, they are Christian recording artists. So again, signs and symbols will give them away. Okay, moving on. Here is a list of all the Jewish-owned pharmacia and healthcare. Okay, all of these lists. These are who are pumping out all the pharmacia and healthcare, jabs, shots, all the pills that have all these horrible side effects that give you other issues, make you look like you're 60 when you're only 40, make you look like you're 80 when you're only 60. Okay, now here is, again, and this is just another example when I tell you guys, don't bag or censor all of the Jewish people, okay? These people who own the record labels, these people who own all the newspaper and the television stations and the pharmacies and all of that, these are Zionists. These are the tippy top up there, near the top of the pyramid, not the tippy top, but they're at the top. They know what they're doing. These are Zionists. These are Kabbalists, okay? Everyday normal Jewish people are just as in the dark as the rest of us, unless they've been doing research too, right? Like the Jewish reporter that I had on the last video. So this is an Ashkenazi academic, Dr. Nathan Abrams, and he says, he's quoted as saying, though Jews make up only 2% of the American population, which I think it's more than that, he says they dominate porn. And you know what? I should probably, this is a good point, good place to say, I think from this point on, this is probably not a video for your children that are under, definitely not under, I would say, 15 years of age. I don't know how your family rolls or what you talk to your children about. I apologize. This is my bad. And I will drop a warning in the video description as well. So you guys hopefully will read that before you start watching this, because I know some of you guys have commented that you watch these with your family. So I will try to catch that in the video description box. But from this point on, I would say I don't think that this is not one that children under 15 should be watching with you, okay? So that being said, he says, I put the porn industry has become the most addictive drug in the world, as well as the newest form of cancer that eats away at the human impulse control center of the brain, as well as eats away at the moral fabric of the family and society as a whole. Shockingly, most millennials and Gen Z, both male and female, find nothing wrong with watching it. Now, that's not to say that the boomers or my generation, the Gen Xers, aren't also watching it, but you'll find it more hidden. They're not so out in the open about it. It's like a shameful addiction that they won't promote, but for some reason with the millennials and the Gen Z, they don't find anything wrong with it, and they don't, for the most part, find the need to hide it, if they are doing it. And I was amazed at the amount of females of those generations that watch it as well. So it's not just a male thing. But Dr. Abrams said that Jewish involvement in porn is the result of a hatred of Christian authority. Again, this goes back to the protocols of the Elders of Zion, right? He says they are trying to weaken the dominant culture in America by moral subversion. He says Jews, or let's be clear, Zionists, the Zionist Kabbalists, are the driving force behind the modern pornographic industry, and their motivation is, in part, to destroy Gentile morals. The degradation of Western Christian social life did not merely happen. It was planned, deliberately fostered and spread as outlined by the protocols of the learned Elders of Zion. So even he is referencing those protocols, which we learned about and we read last week. Okay, so these particular men that I have up on the screen, these are some of the top heads of the porn industry, making them multi-billionaires from the enslavement and degradation of humanity. And it's not just women, but it's men and children as well. So take a look at those faces. These are the porn pushers. These are the ones that are pushing this without any shame. I don't know that they have souls, to be honest with you. Maybe they're creatures. I don't know. But he says, now I think this was from Milton L. Kapner, who goes by Brother Nathaniel. He says, the instruments of this assault on Christian culture and consciousness are the weapons of propaganda, the press, television, cinema, and education. The chief fount of the propaganda is cinema, which is aka movies and television, right? Divorce replaces marriage, abortion replaces birth, and the family becomes the battleground of individual strife. The Jew has attained his goal in destroying Western culture. And then I just put a little tag from the protocols of the learned Elders of Zion. One of their goals is to corrupt the minds with filth and perversion, which is basically the porn industry, and then create entertaining distractions. And they do this through the movie industry in Hollywood, but, now, for people who don't necessarily go to the movies, you can just stay home, right? And just do your Netflix subscription, or your, what else is it? The Amazon one, or whatever. And, there's some real filth that's on those. Okay, and what makes them worse is that if you've got children in your home and you have subscriptions to Prime or to Netflix or Hulu or whatever they are, what if you're not home? What if your children go to click on one of those to find a show? They've got it right there. So now you're spreading that filth and perversion to children in your own home without even knowing what they're doing when you're not there. Okay. The Jews also invented Hollywood. Hollywood did not exist. But the Zionist Kabbalistic Jews invented Hollywood. And the main ones way back in the day were Lemmy created Universal Studios, and then Fox was 20th Century Fox, Goldwyn, MGM, Warner. So all of these Hollywood companies were named after the people. So you've got Zucker, and I'm wondering if the Zucker brothers descend from him, but he had Paramount, and then you've got Meyer from MGM, Warner from Warner Brothers, and then Goldwyn. So anyway, they were the main ones who created Hollywood. And there is a book that was written by Neil Gabler called How the Jews Invented Hollywood, an Empire of Their Own. So in case any of you want to go read that book. So even the Jews invented Hollywood. And then I saw this screenshot, and I'm not sure what newspaper it was in, but it says, "Is Hollywood run by Jews?" You bet. And then it is an article on those Hollywood, those heads of Hollywood there. Okay? So what a perfect way to put out your propaganda, right? What did we cover during World War II? The H event, right? How many movies by Hollywood and these Zionists were put out about the H event? And we found out from firsthand testimonies and people looking into this since the 1960s that the H event never happened. But when you own all the newspapers, when you own all of the radio stations, when you own all of the TV stations, TV I think came out in the 1960s. And then when you have when they own Hollywood and they make all these movies, they can put anything out there and make it seem true. Okay? Now, you might be surprised. Here's a list. I just Googled who are the Jewish A-list actors and actresses in Hollywood. And so all of these faces. So I don't know if you want to pause this as the video goes along and look. These are, there's like so many of them. I'm almost to the point where I'm wondering if you're not Jewish or at least half Jewish, do you even get to be an A-list star? Probably not. I don't know. So, because they like to keep it within the family. So these are the people I put up here are just the more well-known ones, but there's so many more. Okay, like you've got Bette Midler, Adam Sandler, Bob Saget, Barbra Streisand, Carrie Fisher, who was Princess Leia in the original Star Wars, right? Gal Gadot, she's newer on the scene as Wonder Woman. Jamie Lee Curtis, Ashley Tisdale, Harrison Ford, Gwyneth Paltrow, Jack Black, Gene Wilder, okay, just to name a few. Then we've got Natalie Portman, James Franco, Shia LaBeouf, Lisa Kudrow, Steve Guttenberg, Eugene Levy, Elizabeth Taylor. That was a shocker to me. Mila Kunis, Kate Hudson, who's the daughter of Goldie Hawn. So, of course, Goldie Hawn is going to show up in here as well. Sean Penn, Maya Rudolph, Marilyn Monroe. That was another shocker. Joan Rivers, Jennifer Connelly. The Seinfeld guys, right? Jerry Seinfeld, all of those guys. Katie Sagal, Sarah Jessica Parker, Sarah Silverman, Sarah Michelle Gellar, David Arquette, Rosanna Arquette, and Patricia Arquette, all were actors. David Duchovny, I think was it the X-Files? Amanda Peet, Joaquin Phoenix, Kira Sedgwick, Rashida Jones, Michael Douglas, Paul Newman, Rachel Weisz, Richard Gere, Rodney Dangerfield, Roseanne Barr. Yep. Oh, Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man. Yep. He's a Jew too. So these are people that are either 100% Jewish or at least half Jewish. Helena Bonham Carter. She doesn't surprise me. You know, she puts out some pretty dark stuff. I would guess she's into really dark stuff in her life as well. Paul Rudd, aka Ant-Man. And then you've got Maggie Gyllenhaal and also her brother Jake Gyllenhaal. Steven Seagal, Jeff Goldblum, Steven Spielberg. I mean, we knew he was. Leonard Nimoy from Star Trek. Dinah Shore, William Shatner. Are you starting to get a weird, sickish feeling in the pit of your stomach as the realization hits you that America has been invaded by Zionist Jews while we were all stuffing our mouths with buttered popcorn and milk duds? That's the irony, isn't it? The Hollywood Jews kept us distracted and entertained with their movies and perversions, all the while the Zionists quietly took over America. And if you aren't starting to understand right now that America is been taken over and is run by Zionists, Kabbalistic Jews, I'm going to let you know that. This is why America is aligned with the state of Israel, okay? We've been taken over starting in the 1800s and into the 1900s. For a while, half of our Supreme Court were Zionist Jews. I find it interesting that I looked, and recently the majority of them, at least 6 of them, are Catholics, which I think is going to tie into what the Vatican is doing with the one world religion. So I think that's by design. But yep, we've been pretty much taken over, which is why many of our mainstream churches are Christian Zionists, and all of our government people are. Okay, so yeah, we pretty much are just we've been completely taken over. So now, America wasn't the only nation to be taken over by Zionists, because England and Russia were as well. We already know what the Bolsheviks and their Zionist Jewish leaders did to Russia. Okay, that we've covered that quite extensively. But you would be surprised to know that England has been taken over as well. Just wait until you learn about Winston Churchill. So speaking of, if I have an IPOT video clip that I want you guys to watch, and IPOT is In Pursuit of Truth. I pulled from that with the part 2C or part 2D of World War II. So I'm going to go ahead and put up another segment from the same guy, In Pursuit of Truth, regarding Churchill and England. Okay, so sit tight, and I'll put this one up.
The first political plan for a Jewish homeland in Palestine was written by Colonel Charles Henry Churchill in 1841, 50 years before the father of Zionism, Theodore Herzl. Winston's father, Lord Randolph Churchill, was often mocked for his large Jewish circle of friends, many of whom were part of the Rothschilds' banking dynasty. Jewish merchant banker Ernest Cassell had managed Winston's finances for his life, free of charge. His mother, Jenny Jerome, or Jacobson, was from a wealthy Jewish family. Her father, Leonard Jerome, changed from Jacobson, was a large Jewish shareholder of the New York Times, and at the time was known as the King of Wall Street, and a close friend of the prolific Vanderbilt family. Jenny was part Iroquois and one of the first women in elite society to be tattooed. She had a snake coiled around her left wrist. Churchill benefited from the generosity of rich Jews such as Sir Ernest Cassell, and even joked about Sir Philip Sassoon being the restaurant car attached to his train. His sponging induced grotesque fantasies that he was in the pay of international Jewry. In 1924, Churchill filed a libel suit against Lord Alfred, or Bosie, Douglas, lecturer, poet, son of the Marquess of Queensberry, and lover of poet Oscar Wilde. Douglas claimed that Churchill had falsified a report on the naval battle of Jutland in World War I, when the Royal Navy drove back German fleets. Churchill allegedly reported that it was the British who had been defeated, so that British securities prices would drop, allowing a select group of Jewish financiers to buy them up at cheap prices and allowing Cassell to make up a $40 million profit. Both were cleared. Many suspected that Winston was being controlled by Lord Victor Rothschild, by way of Victor's friend and Soviet spy, Guy Burgess. The reportedly gay Churchill was quite fond of Burgess, who frequented Churchill's home at Chartwell. Many suspected that this was how Winston was being influenced, as Burgess was earning nearly 5 times what his contemporaries made. Burgess was recruited as a Soviet agent in 1934, and by the next year, the Anglo-German Fellowship was formed by Burgess and Colonel John Robert McNamara. British historian John Costello tells of an instance when Burgess, McNamara, a War Office official by the name of Tom Wiley, and J.H. Sharp, the Church of England's archdeacon for Southern Europe, took a group of boys to a Hitler youth camp, where the boys allegedly satisfied their sexual passion. The trip was sponsored by the Foreign Relations Council of the Church of England. By 1936, Burgess landed a job producing for the BBC. In October of '38, he met Winston Churchill, and later that year joined British MI6. Guy was also a lover of Sir Anthony Blunt, an art historian and Soviet spy, who later confessed to recruiting young students at Cambridge University. Blunt used homosexuality as a way of blackmailing older boys, and later, men. Anthony knew that much of Britain was run by former prefects, vulnerable to blackmail. He contends that Blunt ran a pedophile ring, which included much of the country's elite. Like Churchill, Blunt was close with the banking families, like the Rothschilds and Warburgs, and shared young boys with the head of MI6, Maurice Oldfield. He goes on to write that much of the royal family were not only homosexual, but had an affinity for young boys. This included Edward, Prince of Wales, his brother George, Duke of Kent, the brother to the Queen, David Bowes-Lyon, and Lord Louis Mountbatten, uncle of Prince Philip, and later husband of the granddaughter of Jewish banker Ernest Cassell. In fact, he makes the point that much of the royal family is indeed Jewish. Everywhere you looked, you could see the Jewish influence in Churchill's life. Bernard Baruch, David Ben-Gurion, Chaim Weizmann, Rufus Isaacs, and even Charlie Chaplin. In 1935, Winston Churchill contacted Britain's first film mogul, Alexander Korda, about a script he had written entitled The Reign of George V, and secured a contract as an assistant producer and historical advisor for the film, a film that would later be shelved. But Korda would prove useful, as his rising status allowed him to connect with Hollywood, where he released a successful trilogy of films: Sanders of the River in 1936, The Drum in 1938, and The Four Feathers in 1939. These English westerns did well at the box office, resulting in Hollywood's 1939 response, Gunga Din. Famed aviator and leader of the America First movement, Charles Lindbergh, was outraged at the propaganda films, arguing that America was being enticed into an unnecessary war. The 3 most important groups who have been pressing this country towards war are the British, the Jewish, and the Roosevelt administration. Lindbergh was plenty aware that the cinemas were a propaganda machine, saying that cinemas soon became filled with plays portraying the glory of war. American author Gore Vidal. The English kept up a propaganda barrage that was to permeate our entire culture. On our screens, it seemed as if the only country on earth was England. British intelligence had no great faith in the American educational system. In May of 1940, Korda was summoned to meet with Duff Cooper, Churchill's Minister of Information. Korda was called to the U.S. to create an American propaganda film. Hollywood at the time was becoming not just a sanctuary for Jewish filmmakers, but a hotbed. Creating a film in Hollywood would create less suspicion for agents and propagandists. That film was That Hamilton Woman, released in March of 1941, featuring Laurence Olivier and Vivien Leigh, who was now one of the world's biggest stars after appearing in the Oscar-winning Gone with the Wind. The film is set during the Napoleonic Wars. The famous line from Olivier, "You cannot make peace with dictators. You have to destroy them, wipe them out," was a clear analogy to Adolf Hitler. This film, along with another one of Churchill's Jewish friends, Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator, United Artists Foreign Correspondent, and MGM's The Mortal Storm, were films that were used as propaganda and received boycotts from America First, as productions that seemed to be preparing Americans for war. Churchill kept a bust of the movie's character, Admiral Horatio Nelson, on his desk, and named his cat the same thing. In September of 1941, 2 months before Pearl Harbor, the U.S. Senate conducted an investigation into propaganda in motion pictures. Exhibit 1, Alexander Korda. Real drama was unfolding with Churchill himself. Much of the world's media was portraying Hitler as the dragon and Churchill as King George. The story of Korda is worth its own film. He was later accused of working for MI6, with payments being shown to British agents in the U.S. Claude Danzy, deputy chief of MI6, sat on the board of London's films after the war. Winston Churchill knighted him in 1942. Today, the BAFTA, or British Film Award, is given in honor to Korda. Another protege of MI6's Claude Danzy was Ian Fleming, or codename Z, who wrote a series of novels that fascinated Korda, especially 1954's Live and Let Die, featuring the now iconic character James Bond. Had Korda not died in 1956, it may have been him who had directed the film.
So what did you think about that? Pretty shocking, huh? I have to say, I didn't think much could surprise me just with all the stuff that I've researched the past 4 to 5 years, but the learning about that and Winston Churchill's involvement, I mean, put more puzzle pieces together for me. But yeah, so I think it's pretty fair to say that not only has America been taken over by the Zionist Jews, but Russia was, and America definitely was, and probably all of the other countries by now, as I said, with the destroying of the monarchies and then making, putting in puppet rulers that are part of the system so that they could have their one world government, right? So, yeah. Okay, let me go ahead, go back to my slideshow. We'll continue on. So, I found this and thought this was quite interesting. Queen Elizabeth found guilty in missing children case. This says it was posted on May 28th, 2016. I'm not sure what the publication was. It was just a screenshot I found out there. It says, whistleblowers were incarcerated. The Queen and her husband have been linked to over 50,000 missing children. Are we surprised? No. And I'm sure most of you probably have seen the picture on the right that somebody filmed of some completely naked man escaping from one of the windows, and I believe that was at Buckingham Palace, using sheets tied. And so he obviously was being held hostage because he's I mean, would you let yourself out a window complete with no clothes on, you know, if you were free to leave through the door? I don't think so. So he obviously was left alone and tied bed sheets together to escape out the window. Okay, now I also found this very interesting. You guys, please forgive me, I think I've said this before. I've been researching a lot of this stuff for the past 5 years. When I first started researching in 2020, you know, spring 2020-ish through, I wasn't always as good at writing down or marking where my sources were. I think I was just so in shock of finding this stuff out that it wasn't on my radar that I was going to be doing a YouTube channel 5 years later and putting these on. So some of these that I don't have source details for, please forgive me. I just, I've had these for quite a while, and it looks like the name of whoever put these video out is on the first picture. But what you're looking at here is a picture of a very young Queen Elizabeth II, and she is taking part in some type of outdoor druidic ceremony. Okay, usually they do them in the oak groves and such. So maybe before her coronation, I don't know the time frame, but she looks very young, and this is definitely a druidic ceremony or druidic coronation of sorts that she is going through. So this helps explain what these royals are part of. Okay, I don't think she's the first royal to have to go through this ceremony, and I'm not sure if you can be king or queen unless you do go through the ceremony. I don't know. And then of course we have Prince Philip, her husband, and he has said, quoted as saying, "If I were reincarnated, I would wish to be returned to Earth as a killer virus to lower the human population levels." So it's quite obvious that he is also a eugenic, follows the eugenic camp, and he would like to decimate most of us if he had his will, if he had his druthers. And what's also interesting is I just recently stumbled upon a family tree. There is a YouTube guy I like to follow, Useful Charts, and he'll put up all the pedigree charts of the different rulers or people groups or whatever. And shouldn't be a surprise, but both Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth II are both descended from Queen Victoria, but through different children of Queen Victoria. So all of these bloodlines are related. They are, whether it's 2nd degree, 3rd degree separation, 5th degree separation, whatever, but they're all related to one another. Man, these are some great upstanding people ruling England. Now we've got Queen Lizzie, quite a bit older, and she's got her helper lady wearing the blue dress, and you can see I've circled her belt and made that bigger. So we got another brotherhood. Just these people are all part of the brotherhood. Okay, now again, remember a few slides ago I showed you the pass grip of the fellow brotherhood craft. It says it shows how to do the handshake while holding the candidate by this grip. So you can see here where I've circled Queen Lizzie is doing the grip of whoever that gentleman is. Okay, here we've got Chucky, her son Chucky, doing the pass grip, the brotherhood pass grip with whoever this gentleman is. To the right, another one of Queen Lizzie. They do the grip with each other. All right, it's another way of signifying or showing. Here we have Prince William receiving some kind of a soccer trophy or something, and he's sharing a handshake grip with that gentleman. Aha. And then here, some more signs and symbols. This is the sign of the master of the second veil. Ooh, right? So if you ever see pictures of any of these people, even very old ones, and they've got this hand in the in the coat jacket, this is the sign of the master of the second veil that they're signaling. So there we've got Chucky in the middle, and then we've got Harry to the right. And then this guy wearing his very fancy Brotherhood apron and all of his fancy jewelry. This is King George VI. This was Queen Elizabeth II's, Queen Lizzie's father. So long, I think they're all part of the Brotherhood. Long line of the Brotherhood. Oh, and look at this. Apparently the popes became Jews too. Now before you guys go, girls say what? Yep. This was quite a shocker. So I said, here is a look at the various head coverings of the popes. I found this out quite by accident. I wasn't looking for it. I was just looking through all of the popes since going back all the way to the ante-Nicene fathers, right? Which you can see here to the left, this like John the Fourth. He was a pope from 642 to 640. So you can see these early guys didn't really wear anything on their heads, or they kind of wore the bald head like the friars with the ring of hair around it. And then, but sometimes the popes, like right here to the right, I know it seems a little bit backwards, but Pope Boniface the Ninth, even going clear to the right, Urban the Fifth, okay, who was Pope from 1362 to 1370. Okay, this is Pope Urban V. You can see they've got these kind of, I think they're Scythians. I've seen the Scythians, the ancient Scythians would wear these hats, like these gold, hats. So they were wearing those. So let's see, you've got Urban V, Gregory the 11th, Urban the 6th, and then Boniface the 9th. They're all wearing, the gold elongated head things. I don't know. Maybe they had elongated heads. I'm not sure, but that's what the head coverings were after. And then by the time we get to 1775, which is just the year before the Illuminati was created in 1776, and then quite coincidentally, I'm sure the American Revolution came about. So by 1775, the head covering changed to a skull cap. So you can see so going to the left, Alexander the Sixth, they have like little hats on, like little bonnets or little hats. And he reigned from 1492 to 1503. So, and he was from Spain. So he was, definitely around during the time of the Spanish Inquisition. But you can see these guys had like little bonnet or little hat things on that covered a good portion of their head, right? But then by the time that we get over to Pope Clement the 13th, who was Pope from 1758 to 1769. Okay, he's still got the little red hat on, and so does Clement the 19th. But then by the time we get to Pope Pius VI, who was Pope from 1775 to 1799, you can see the hat has changed to a skull cap. And so you can see where I've got the blue arrows pointing. It has changed to a skull cap. So let's go a little further. Okay, so now we've got Pope Leo the 12th, 1823 to 1829, and then Pope Pius the the 8th, 1829 to 1830, and then Pope Gregory the 16th, 1831 to 1846, all of them, as shown by where the green arrow is pointing, are wearing skull caps. And I thought that's very interesting. And then here is another big list of all of the popes, from Pope Benedict, I think that's Pope Benedict the 14th, all the way down to Francis. Okay, all wearing the skull caps. And I thought that is very, very interesting. I thought to myself, boy, they almost look like the little yarmulke things that the Jews wear. Well, then I found this. I thought, that is bizarre. That is Pope Francis bowing. So let me just read what I put. Here we see Jesuit Pope Francis wearing his yarmulke, bowing to and kissing the hands of the Rothschilds, the Rotten children. Have we ever in history seen a pope kiss the hand of anyone? No, nope. It's always people coming and bowing to, and if he lets them, if they're special, they can kiss his ring. Very interesting. It's almost as if the unholy see is run by Zionists. Well, actually, that's exactly the case. F. Tupper Saucy, author of the book Rulers of Evil, on page 15 wrote the following: aware that the Rotten children are an important Jewish family, he says, I looked them up in the Encyclopedia Judaica and discovered that they bear the title Guardians of the Vatican Treasury. The Vatican Treasury, of course, holds the imperial wealth of Rome. Okay? So at some point, starting about 1775, it would seem the Zionists, or the Jews, or some kind of Jewish influence, infiltrated the Vatican. And because if you look here, look at Pope Francis with his little white skull cap on, and then you've got the Rothschild guy with his black one on. Do they not look like the same headpiece to you? They look exactly like the same headpiece to me. And here's some more pictures. Pope Francis kisses the hand of Rothschild and Rockefeller. Again, look, they're wearing the skull caps. They're all wearing the skull caps. So if you didn't know that that was Pope Francis, would you not think that that was a Jew? So very, very interesting. And it appears that Pope Francis is also a brotherhood, he's a brother man as well. He's part of the brotherhood. Because we're showing the sign of he's presenting the sign of the master of the second veil. And Francis isn't the only one. Okay? Whatever this creepy looking dude is, I don't know which pope he is, but he's doing the grip, the handshake grip thing with, and I think that's Tony Blair of England. And then this guy over here is doing the 666 I thing. And so, I don't know. Very things that make you go, All right. So that is all I have for you today. Again, just trying to put together some more of these puzzle pieces, but it seems to me how I'm interpreting all of what I just showed, that not only has America been completely taken over by the Zionists, but it seems Britain has as well. We know that the Bolsheviks took over Russia with the USSR. Probably our school systems, and apparently the Vatican. So it seems to me, the way I'm interpreting this is that all of these different tentacles, like all the different tentacles, are starting to merge together. And I think the lines are being blurred between the Jews and the Jesuits and the Brotherhood. I think they're all converging and melding together. So at any rate, I apologize for not putting up that warning, the age viewer discretion warning at the beginning of the video. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that gets put into first thing in the description. So hopefully you guys actually will look at the description box and see that warning and not have any children under 14 watching with you. And then also make sure you look for the links to the John Todd pieces, and then what else did I have up there? Oh, the IPOT video. All right. Thank you so much for taking time out to join me today. I hope that you found this video helpful, maybe putting together some more puzzle pieces for you. I pray that you have a blessed week, and please do share these videos with other people so that we can get the word out there, because my hope, especially with this World War III video series, my hope is that we won't fall into their trap. If we can get this information out there and we can warn people, we will make it not so easy for them to accomplish what they want to accomplish. Okay? So anyway, take care, and we will see you next week. I have no idea what I'm going to be presenting. Just trying to follow the lead of the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, and just whatever gets put on my heart to do. So your guess at this point is as good as mine, but we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.